First at 9.
Well, a very good evening to you. This is your primetime news bulletin from our News First Center here in Colombo, live on MTV Sports and Shakti TV. I'm Shahin Jurangpati.
And I'm Shanali De Silva. Appeals judges uphold the conviction of former Liberian President Charles Taylor, reaffirming the 50-year prison sentence he was given last year for war crimes and crimes against humanity committed during Sierra Leone's civil war.
Well, those details of those stories will come your way on our News First International Desk. But before that, here's a look at your headlines.
Headlines on News First at 9.
Supreme Court rules that land powers are vested with the central government and not the provincial councils. President tells the UN Secretary General that the Sri Lankan Army Women's Corps is available for deployment for UN peacekeeping missions. Former President Chandrika Bandaranaike makes a statement on the founder of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party.
දැන් සමහරු කියනවා අපේ තාත්තා තමයි මේ පක්ෂය හැදුවේ බණ්ඩාරනායක අගමැතිතුමාක් කියලා. ඒ වෙලාවේ නම් ඒ කියන පුද්ගලයෝ හිටියේ නැහැ.
News First at 9.
President Mahinda Rajapaksa, who is in New York to attend the 68th session of the United Nations General Assembly, engaging bilateral discussions with Commonwealth Secretary General Kamlesh Sharma.
According to the presidential spokesman and international media unit, much of the discussions between President Mahinda Rajapaksa and Commonwealth Secretary General Kamlesh Sharma had focused on the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting due to take place in Colombo in November. Sharma had informed the president that many countries who visited Sri Lanka as part of the advance visits had been very satisfied with the planning underway in preparation for the summit. During the meeting, Kamlesh Sharma noted that there is a positive feeling about Shogam and what it hopes to achieve. In response, President Mahinda Rajapaksa had said, quote, "We have to deliver something practical or it will be just another meeting," unquote. Furthermore, President Mahinda Rajapaksa also met with Pakistani Premier Nawaz Sharif in New York yesterday.
Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan government has informed UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon that the Sri Lanka Army Women's Corps is available for deployment for UN peacekeeping missions.
Now, the presidential spokesman and international media says that this decision, an international media unit says this decision had been conveyed to the UN Secretary General when a Sri Lankan delegation headed by President Mahinda Rajapaksa met with Ban Ki-moon recently.
Sri Lanka has also pledged to provide helicopters, armored trucks and other equipment needed for the UN peacekeeping missions.
Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, Ravinath Arya Singh, says that the UN Human Rights Commissioner has no mandate to call for the international community to establish its own inquiry mechanism.
He made this comment at the 24th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva yesterday.
The government of Sri Lanka has also taken positive steps to address the issue of accountability. The government of Sri Lanka strongly repudiates the High Commissioner's assertion that if certain concerns are not comprehensively addressed, she believes the international community will have a duty to establish its own inquiry mechanisms. We wish to state that the High Commissioner has no mandate to make such a claim.
Arya Singh made this comment in response to a statement by UN Human Rights Commissioner Navanithan Pillai, which was read out by Deputy High Commissioner of the UNHRC, Flavia Pansieri, yesterday.
The High Commissioner welcomes the elections to the Northern Provincial Council, which were held successfully on the 21st of September, and she hopes this will usher in an important new stage in the devolution of power. Regrettably, the High Commissioner detected no new or comprehensive effort to independently or credibly investigate the allegations which have been of concern to the Human Rights Council. She encourages the government to use the time between now and March 2014, when a written formal report will be presented to this Council, to engage in a credible national process with tangible results, including the successful prosecution of individual perpetrators, in the absence of which she believes the international community will have a duty to establish its own inquiry mechanism.
The Supreme Court decided today that land powers are vested with the central government and not with provincial councils.
Now, the Supreme Court delivered the ruling today when an appeal filed at the Supreme Court over the eviction of an individual who is residing illegally in a plot of land owned by the Ministry of Plantation that was given on rent to private plantations enterprise.
When the case was taken up at the Kandy High Court, it was decided that the central government should act regarding matters relating to land. Later, this verdict was made void by the Court of Appeal, taking into consideration the verdicts handed down by former Chief Justices Shirani Bandaranayake and Sarath N. Silva in two separate cases that read that land powers were vested with the provincial councils. Rejecting the decision of the Court of Appeal, which went by the verdict given by former Chief Justices Shirani Bandaranayake and Sarath N. Silva, the Supreme Court delivered judgment today on the appeal filed related to the plot of land. Appearing on behalf of the Ministry of Plantations, who were cited as respondents, Attorney at Law Gomin Dayasri pointed out that land powers were not vested with the provincial councils through the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. The attorney noted that the 30th Amendment to the Constitution states that land powers are vested with the central government. He pointed out that in a case filed by several chief ministers after the United People's Freedom Alliance came into power, land powers were handed to the provincial council based on a Supreme Court decision. Taking these facts into consideration, the three-judge bench comprising of Chief Justice Mohan Piris, Justices Keshri Pavan and Eva Vanasundara decided that land powers were not vested with the provincial councils. Members of the bench announced three separate decisions and all three rulings reached the same conclusion. The Supreme Court pointed out that land powers vested with the President were not handed out to anyone through the 30th Amendment to the Constitution. The Supreme Court decided that when looking at the entire Constitution, it is evident that the central government had only handed limited land powers to the provincial councils for council purposes, and handing over those powers were carried out according to the discretion of the central government.
This is indeed a very historic judgment in recent times, because this is the first time that three judges of the Supreme Court have written separate judgments coming to the same point of view, namely that under the 13th Amendment, land is a subject of the central government, so that so far the wrong view that prevailed in this country among people and pronounced often by the Supreme Court was that it belonged to the provincial councils. Now, what is very important is the view that prevailed, and the controversy relating to land issue will no longer be an issue, because Supreme Court has finally, in a unanimous decision, in three separate judgments arriving at one conclusion, held that land is a matter for the central government.
United People's Freedom Alliance states that the appointment of chief ministers and councillors for the northwestern and central provinces will take place next week.
Issuing a communique, General Secretary of the UPFA Minister Susil Premajayantha notes that the appointments will be made upon President Mahinda Rajapaksa's return to the island from New York.
The communique released by the UPFA points out that candidates representing various parties within the alliance have been elected to the provincial councils this time around. It reads that while there are instances when chief ministerial candidates were named prior to the elections, there were also instances when appointments were made to the position after the election based on the decision of the alliance. The communique adds that no candidate was named by the alliance for the position of chief minister prior to the recently concluded provincial council elections.
Meanwhile, Minister Vimal Veerawangsa has been making repeated statements on the collapse of the opposition.
Speaking during functions held to inaugurate various development initiatives in the Kurunegala and Matale districts, Minister Vimal Veerawangsa reiterated that a situation has arisen where the opposition is no longer capable of achieving victory. The opposition parties are on their knees. They no longer have political slogans to build political forces. They are struggling by clinging on to bogus slogans. It will not work. Minister Veerawangsa, who criticized the opposition in this manner, fielded 5 candidates from his party, the National Freedom Front, for the recently concluded elections. However, none of his party representatives were able to secure victory in the Central Province or the Northwestern Province. Reports have emerged that Nimal Piatissa, who served as a former Minister of Agriculture in the Central Province and who contested as the NFF candidate from the Noor Elia district for the Central Provincial Council post this time but lost, has been allocated a bonus seat.
The JVP will inspect these election results carefully and formulate our path for the future. We are ready to represent the problems and the needs of the common man. However, certain groups that have wriggled their way into the government and groups that are surviving on the scraps thrown away by the government are stating that these results show the destruction of the opposition. However, for the first time in Sri Lanka, these individuals who work for the ruling alliance and do all their dirty work, and those who clean up after them, were not able to secure victory. Not even one of their candidates secured victory. They now have to rely on the scraps thrown out from the alliance. They now survive by obtaining bonus seats. Individuals who shout about the collapse of the opposition should first reflect on their existence, which has been restricted to surviving on scraps that are thrown out.
The 54th anniversary of late SWRD Bandaranaike was marked today.
A number of events were organized in lieu of the 54th memorial.
Floral tributes were laid at the Bandaranaike Memorial in Horogolla this morning. Former President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, the Prime Minister and government opposition politicians were present at the event.
இந்த நாட்டு அரசியலிலே அவர்கள் பிரதி அமைச்சர்கள் அனைவரும் வருகின்ற வேளை
An event to donate wheelchairs and an event to distribute dry rations at the Old Sangha Bodhi Hall in Nitambua took place under the auspices of Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga. Equipment was presented to children with special needs at the Muslim Social Services Institute in Dulmala, Tiharia in memory of late SWRD Bandaranaike.
In 1958, the Bandaranaike-Chevanayagam Pact was signed. Up to date, there is talk about the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. The powers given to the Muslims and Tamils in this country went beyond the 13th Amendment. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party has no communal or racist policy. The founder of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party had a vision for the party, and that vision is still called the Bandaranaike vision. Today, various visions have been included in it. Some say that their fathers created the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, but those who say it were not even there back then.